I am unashamed. What about you?
So, as advertised, we have another guest. This has been amazing. This has been the week of guests.
Yeah.
We've had every podcast we do. Normally we sprinkle in some guests, but it just so happened that this particular time everybody came through at the same time.
Plus multiple skill sets.
That's right. That's a little bit of everybody.
You know, hamburger makers, duck call makers, table makers. This table, you know, carpenters, artists. They draw things. You're like, the kingdom is made up of a lot.
Well,
of
and
types.
we have to send Jase out from time to time just to have these awkward run-ins with people to be able to have stories to tell on the podcast. He needs new material, so we have to send him out. Just say go, and then because when he comes back, it'll be something you've never imagined possible to happen to somebody. You know, is that not right? Every time, Jase?
Like Kenny, now where did this thing start in your life? You're over there, where, Mississippi?
No, North Carolina.
North Carolina.
North Carolina.
You're in North Carolina.
Yeah.
By way of
I knew
Mississippi.
it was east somewhere. So
I did come through Mississippi, yes, on the way here. But yeah.
So you're over there. When did you first say you had a moment? What?
Oh, I'm in Jase's chair, so I get to tell a story. Okay.
You do get to tell a story.
Well, let me tell this story. I was actually raised in an agnostic atheist family.
Yep.
But even at age like 12, I used to sit down and watch Dr. Robert Schuller at the Crystal Cathedral on Sunday mornings because I knew something was there. You know, even though, and sometimes I'd even get teased a little bit by the fact, there's Kenny getting his church this morning. And I'll never forget, I reached out, wrote a letter, I guess getting one from a little 12-year-old boy. They weren't asking for any money or anything. And they sent me a cross. And I wore that cross until I lost it in the Atlantic Ocean lifeguard. And basically, I wore it. Then I kind of went crooked, was an athlete just like you, Phil. Played college baseball, ran with a rough crowd. And because look, if people don't think athletes don't have a good time, they don't okay. We'll tell some stories later on. We'll share some back and forth. And long story short, married a wonderful woman. Been married to her for 35 years. She was raised in a church. Probably the second time I stepped into church was the day I got married in it. Was really glad I didn't catch on fire when I was up there at the front of the place. And but then she put up with a lot. And in my early 30s, I got baptized because I thought, that'd be a nice thing to do for her. And but I remember I didn't want to do it in the sanctuary in front of everybody. It was almost like I was ashamed of it. And it's funny, I'm on Unashamed now, but I was almost like I was ashamed of it a little bit. And, maybe deep down, I didn't think I was worthy of it or whatever the case may be. But started my company in 1991 with $500. And this is where God starts working in my life. And I've deviated. You mentioned one time, Phil, on the podcast, you said, as you get on this journey, you will zig and you will zag.
That's it.
Well, I did some zagging. Okay. Yep. There's no doubt about that.
We all do.
Well, I did. And so about 1991, I had been fired from a job, had $500 to my name, found a closed restaurant, found the people that owned the equipment, and basically, long story short, got them to in-house finance me the equipment. And I vowed I never wanted to get fired again. That felt horrible. And so I wanted to control my own fate. And once again, not a strong Christian at this point at all, but had a good work ethic. And I'd followed all these professional speakers that had always said, hey, if you are passionate and you work hard, you'll be a big success. Well, I said, you know what? I can do those two things. And Karen and I had our first son, Andy. So I got the restaurant. Finally got a lease. I had to beg to get a lease and named it after my son, Andy. And back to that lease thing real quick. Y'all get a kick out of this. So I called some people I knew who had money because I had to have a cosigner on the lease because
we know about cosigner.
Yeah,
that's how we
have
start.
A cosigner. Yep. And they all were like, "Ooh, that's probably the worst lease I've ever heard of. I can't step out on that." And finally called my father-in-law and asked him if he'd cosign, and he said yes. And I thought, wow. That's amazing. He believes in me. But then I found out later, I think he was really afraid we were going to move in with him. I really think that's the reason. He said, we'll give him a shot right now. Let him start to
He was basically just co-signing to keep
the money out of him.
He was keeping him at arm's length.
He was covering his bases, bud. I'll tell you that right now. But,
I like it.
So anyway, in 91, I opened up. I worked hard. I worked open to close, cooked every burger from 10 in the morning till 10 at night, and did that 7 days a week. And I was in a mall. And so we did get off a little early.
So
on
you
Sunday.
highlighted burgers.
Highlighted burgers, cheesesteaks, full service. So I had wait staff, but I only had 4 tables and 16 bar stools. I had a little tiny spot.
Yeah.
And
and you were the guy in the kitchen.
I cooked everything. Matter of fact, I would race to the back, and the burger that I burnt, I would eat that. That was my lunch. You know, if I burnt one, I'd keep it in the corner, and I'd eat that crunch burger in the back. And well, anyway, so at the end of 91, I looked up, and I'd actually done 3 more deals because I had this idea that if I built more stores, that we would have name recognition, brand recognition, and thus people would come and eat with us. And at the end of year 1, I was $35,000 behind on my food bills. And at passion, if you back then, Phil, if I'd have bumped in and you said, "Hey man, how's it going?" I'd have given you 30 minutes of the best of how it was going. I was passionate. I mean, I was fired up about what I was doing.
Yeah.
I had the second coming of burgers, if you will. It was fresh, and but I was failing. I was $35,000 behind on my food bills, and I'm riding home one night, and finally I'd kind of hit that wall. I was tired. Feet ached a little bit, standing on that hard floor, cooking that food. All it smelled like onions and peppers from the cheesesteaks we cooked, and
you were basically working your tail off.
I was working my butt off, and not winning.
Yep.
And I wasn't winning.
Because you're below the line. You're below the Mendoza line, right?
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. I mean, we were, now, once again, I was positive and all that, but I was right on final, and I missed a family reunion, and I'm missing my son grow up, basically, too. I'd catch him for an hour or so in the morning, but he'd be in bed when I got home at night. So I'm just kind of having a little pity party. And I swear, y'all, this is the first time God really stepped in on me. And you would think it would have been enough to make me really leap in. I heard a voice, and the voice is as clear as I'm sitting in front of you today, and it said, "Hey, man, it's not about you." So what do you mean it's not about me? I'm the guy that's not seeing his child. I'm the guy that's not really being a very good husband right now. I'm the guy that's, what do you mean it's not about you? What have you done for others lately? How have you served them? So I got home that night, and I stared at the ceiling for about an hour. Finally dozed off, got up the next day, changed the direction of the company. Said, "You know what?" I started announcing it out loud. "Guys, if you do a great job, I will sell you that restaurant. I'll make you a franchisee. I will help you become successful." And I'm proud to say that here we are now at 120 plus restaurants in multiple states. And I've still got over 50 to 60 former minimum wage employees that own their own stores today.
Well,
Now, here's the cool part. 6 months later, we were in the black. 6 months later. Now, once it wasn't. That's a pretty good sign, Phil, but I wasn't in yet. Okay. I wasn't all in yet. I was, like I told Al, I said I had about 75% of my chips in, but I wasn't all in. And then anytime we ever struggled, it was when I made it about me. I can't believe that franchisee did that. And I had some people around me that loved me. Because I have my staff, bless their hearts, they've been around for average over 20 years, and they enabled me, if you will, on my pity party sometime. And then the company would struggle in 08, 09. It was a tough time when the economy went down. Sure, let me tell you how I ended up at this table, because this was the conversion. So 2019 October, former baseball buddy of mine, Billy Godwin, he's a head coach at UNC Greensboro now. He was getting married, and he asked me to marry him. Well, my first response was, I think we can get somebody a little bit more qualified than me. Now, think about your previous life, Phil, if you'd have had a friend. Now, I wasn't quite where you were, okay? I would say that. But if somebody had said, "Hey, Phil, how about," you would have probably said, "Can we get somebody a little more qualified?" But I thought about that thing, and I took it serious. I actually went online and became ordained, which you can do for about $40, by the way, okay? And matter of fact, I closed the wedding with, "By the powers vested in me and the almighty internet, I now pronounce you husband and wife."
Yeah, one of my nephews said he took it upon himself to go in and to get me for $35, $40,
to ordain you.
To ordain me. And I'm like, I don't even know whether that's legal or not, dude. I don't even have to be on the premises.
Well, sadly, even to do it locally, it doesn't take much. I mean, if you go down and sign a paper at the courthouse, you don't have to show any qualifications, anything, and then you can do weddings. So
if it helps your feelings, I'm not legally a preacher.
Well, as long as the check doesn't bounce, you can be one here when we leave today. I believe as long as the check clears, you're good. But,
I'm not sure I want to start any internet churches with the.
So pick it up from there.
So here we are, and I had really started to work on myself, and I did it privately. I didn't even share this with my wife. I didn't share it with my close friends or the people. I just started to. God started to work on me is what happened. And that was, well, so now kind of flash forward to around February, right before the pandemic, that same guy who I married, he had a stroke, and he's about 3 years younger than me. And he was down in Myrtle Beach, South Carolina. They had an opening weekend series with multiple teams. And I found out on Sunday, I didn't go watch him, but a friend of mine texted me, said our friend had a stroke. And so I told my wife, I said, hey, honey, I'm going to be going to Myrtle Beach in the next half hour. If you want to go with me, I'd love to have you, and hop in the car, but I got to go see him. And I gave her 45 because that's what we do for our wives she was not ready in 30, but I gave her 45 and fed her on the way down too. So she'd be happy. And, but long story short, as we're riding down there, I started thinking he was a scout the year before for the Yankees. He would have been in a hotel going to scout teams without all those people around him. And he may have laid in that bed until the maid showed up to clean the room. And y'all know as well as I do, if you have a stroke, you got about a 2-hour window to get that shot, to reverse it. And he might have missed that window. So I started thinking about that. And as we were riding, Karen looked up the hospital and said, Kenny, you're not going to believe this. It says, North Myrtle Beach Medical Center, we specialize in strokes. And that's where he was, and that's where he went. So he was at the best facility he could have possibly been at. And I don't know, I just got real emotional. I walked in the room. He had tears in his eyes. I had tears in my eyes. And look, now, we are two alpha males, too. I may tell you, I'll go ahead and share that with you. But we were both, we make sure to say, I love you, brother, all the time when we hang up the phone together. Now, unashamedly, I might add. But walked in the room, and I was just emotional. Well, let me tell you where y'all come in. So while I was on that path of working on myself, before I'd go home at night, I'd go on YouTube and watch a Duck Dynasty episode. This will make you feel good, Phil, because I know there's some parts of that experience that kind of make you roll your eyes from time to time, but this will make you feel good. Because I would watch it, and the prayer and the voiceover at the end, I would close my day of work with that and walk in my house with a smile on my face. And like I said, I was in the process of God working on me and me working on me. Well, then underneath that on YouTube, this podcast popped up. Well, right before I started watching that instead. And Al gave his email address out on there one time. And do you remember doing that, Al?
Stupidly, yes, I do.
But no,
I'm just kidding.
It was a God thing because I got that. Billy had his stroke. I had your email. And I just said to myself, you know what? I'm ready to go all in. And I love that family because they're authentic. Mm-hmm. They are 100% authentic in their faith. And I'm just going to fire an email out to that address that he stupidly.
I say that lovingly.
No, I know. And I sent it out, and I thought, I probably won't get anything back, but something's telling me I got to reach out to them. That's who's got to baptize me. And within 24 hours, Al responded. And I knew you did your homework because I knew you Googled our restaurants and whatnot, and probably making sure I was who I said I was.
Well, and your story, I mean, the short bit you gave me intrigued me because, I knew if you had the wherewithal to have a chain of restaurants, that you were the sort of person that would impact people. And not meaning that anybody can impact anybody, but I knew you had a wide range, and I thought, I at least want to find out who this guy is and what his story is. And so that's what compelled me to respond once I read it and checked you out. Let's take a quick break.
It's a wonderful story.
Thank you.
So, Kenny, you and I are about the same age. You're a couple years older than me.
Slightly older.
Slightly older.
Yes.
Do you get some aches and pains? You're a
I literally just got up a minute ago and wobbled. Yes.
I heard creaking. I thought it was that chair you were sitting in, but I realized you were doing the creaking.
I was the creaking.
So one of our products we talk about a lot, you may need to give this a try, is Omega XL. Dad and I both take it. Basically, it attacks inflammation. And these folks, the McQuillans that came up with this, she's a doctor and she's amazing. My phone conversation with her was amazing because I learned more about inflammation and pain than I ever knew before. But they wound up growing and harvesting mussels in New Zealand that produce this oil that is the base of the product. So it's natural, but it attacks inflammation. And we've been taking it for a while, over a year, and it works so much so that, we're probably going to do some work for these guys and talking about their product. So what you do is you want to check these guys out. You go to omegaxl.com/Phil. You're going to buy a bottle, and then they're going to give you a second bottle free, which is 2 months worth of their product. And it takes about 8 weeks for your system for it really start working. So it's perfect. They'll get you where you need to be. omegaxl.com/Phil, or you can call them 800-844-4888. That's 800-844-4888. omegaxl.com/Phil.
You responded right back. And then look how all this stuff falls out. So here we are in late February. I look at the date. My actual birthday is March 15th, is on a Sunday, which is the day to be baptized on. So I thought, perfect. That fell out. That fell out just right. Yep. This must be real. Al and I had contacted through email a couple of times, and he was like, come on down. Well, then around March 12th, the world ended. When
the
you're
country shut down.
The country shut down from the microbe, and and so the 15th was coming up, and I knew I had to get in the car and start heading this way. And so we called the church that morning on a Friday morning. And they said, "Yeah, we're going to be open." And I said, "All right, I'm coming." And Al and I had still not talked. I found out later you were meeting your new sister at that point, so I give you an out on that for not really responding to me quickly. Okay, had a little bigger issue bigger issue that you were dealing with there than the hamburger guy from Mount Olive, North Carolina. But anyway, so I started driving and get to about Birmingham, decided to check my emails, and sure enough, and that's how I ended up down here and ended up with you guys. And then Phil, you took me out in that river and. And
well, we found Kenny's number because I didn't have his number. We were just emailing, and so Lisa tracked him down somehow, and we got his number. And so I called him. I'm driving home from Branson Friday night, and we had just decided. I just got on the phone with Mike, and we decided we weren't going to meet Sunday. I mean, the church we were shutting down, and we were just going to live stream. So then I remembered that Kenney was coming. So I called him basically to say, "Don't come because we're not even meeting, and y'all weren't. The university was shut down as well." And I said, "Have you already left North Carolina?" He said, "Yeah, I'm in Birmingham, Alabama."
I pulled off an exit in Birmingham.
I said, "Well, you're almost here." I said, "Well, come on, and we'll figure it out. Just come to the building on Sunday, and we'll figure out what we're going to do." And so he did. And it was ironic because we were talking about that on the last podcast. We didn't, the first day I was going to preach my sermon, but then everything was like, we felt like we had to tell our church what was going on. We didn't know how long we were going to be locked down. I mean, everything was just up in the air. So Mike and I just sort of did we're going to be okay through this type lesson. We're going to trust God. We are going to try to protect our vulnerable people because we got older people here. So we don't want to give them this thing if it might kill them. It was all still so fresh. And so Kenney happened to be here that day because he's ready to get his life going and, to basically complete what God had been doing all this time.
Right.
So he's there. He's got his camo T-shirt on with his.
That was my staff. They gave me a new one today.
It had like your birthday on it or something.
It had Peter,
the
verse from Peter. Yeah, a baptism and my birthday across the front.
That's right. Yep. And so he was there in that audience, and like I said, we only had just a handful of people. And so after it was over, I said, Dad's not here because he's out on the river. And I said, "Do you want to be baptized here?" I said, "I can baptize you in the baptistry here." I said, "We can run down to the river and do it down there," which we don't do a lot of river baptisms anymore. And so Kenney was like, "I'd like to go to the river." I
needed the river. Okay.
I like your choice.
I did. I needed the river. And
so we came out and it was high water. We've had high water 5 years in a row. So it was this week, a year ago. So we had the same high water today. And so we just went down there right off the road. And, of course, Kenney, I don't know if you had waders on because water's still pretty cold. Yeah. So we put a pair on Kenney and we cinched him up around the waist because the idea is that, you're going to get wet up top, but maybe it won't go through. But did that work?
All right, there seemed to have been a little controversy on the podcast. First off, Jace thought I was a wimp because I went out there with waders on. What he doesn't understand is the walk out there was great. But as soon as I went under, the water rushed in to the
and it was, by the way, it was cold. We were in the middle of a cold snap that week.
You may not remember this, but my feet popped up and my body was down. So you were struggling to get me out. I figured God needed to just keep me down there. We need this guy to stay down here just a hair longer.
Some people are so bad, we hold them under for a little longer just to make sure.
Sometimes the new birth it has certain ups and downs as well as his original birth from his mother.
That's right.
Sometimes it's painful for everybody involved.
Some come out easy and some come out difficult.
But I like the idea that you were born again on your birthday from your mother.
Awesome.
It was his rebirthday.
Oh, that's cool. It was perfect. And you know, when the water rushed in and when you pulled me back up, you know, I think I told you when I was baptized in my 30s, I didn't even want to do it in the sanctuary. Yeah. First thing I did was ask Al, because Al took a video. I said, do you mind if I put this on my Facebook page? And I've got 5,000 or so people on there who follow our company and follow me. And I plopped that thing right on there. I was totally unashamed. I wanted everybody to know there was a new Kenney Moore in town. And
listen to this, Kenny. At one time, we too were foolish, disobedient, deceived, and enslaved by all kinds of passions and pleasures. We lived in malice and envy, being hated and hating one another. But when the kindness and love of God our Savior appeared, when God becomes flesh, he saved us, not because of righteous things we had done, but because of his mercy. Listen to this. He saved us through the washing of rebirth down on that river and renewal by the Holy Spirit, whom he poured out on us generously through Christ Jesus our Lord. That's just in Titus, you know, John 3:5, you must be born again. Titus 3:5, that way it's easier to remember, ladies and gentlemen, 3:5. Titus says the washing of rebirth. Your faith moves you to say, I need to be reborn again. Right. I need you to have the washing of rebirth. You say, it's a cool thing, you know?
Yeah, it's awesome.
Oh, it is.
Let me give you a neat postscript about how God's worked with us on this too. So I leave here on fire. I think Al will tell you, I was like hugging him. I love you, you know, and he's like, I had to get this guy off of me, get him out of here. He's a little crazy. But I drove, I left about noon and I drove to Mount Olive, North Carolina that day. I mean,
you got to remember,
you just floating all the way.
I was gone.
From now on, you'll be the Burger Man. The Burger Man.
Did I not call that?
Yeah.
What you got to remember is weirdness is in. Dude.
Yeah. Well, I'm going to tell you because I want all your listeners out there to really hear.
Not
this.
that you're weird, but
I'm a little weird. It's okay.
He owns it.
You could use that with me, but I want you. So on March 17th. The governor of North Carolina shut down our stores. So this is 2 days later.
Yeah.
I had a peace about me that I've never had leading this company. I had a calm about me. And we have a way of communicating through video. And I just would do video saying, guys, stay positive. We got this. And our stores are mostly in strip centers. So we didn't have drive-through. So we were really, really going to take a hit. Listen to this. The end of March was brutal. April was really tough. May, we were down same-store sales a little bit. June, July, August, September, October, November, December, January, February, same-store sales increases. Our sales went up in a pandemic. We were so much more successful this past year than we were in 2019. It's frightening. Yep. God is good. God is real good.
Yes, sir.
And I now, because here's the guy that when he was 32 that didn't want to get baptized in the sanctuary. Now, not only do I wear this, if you will, and literally on a tattoo on my arm, this philosophy of love your neighbor, but I'm putting it on our restaurants. I'm putting Corinthians and Galatians on the side of the wall without putting the scripture up there, but I want people to ask questions and think about it.
Just like you just described, duck call sales, it hits from the same time frame you said, same months, and it starts. And look, here's duck call sales.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
I'm like, let's see, if you get a viral infection, a pandemic, that's good for duck call sales. I said, why would that be good for duck call sales? I said, I guess the Almighty says,
that's right.
Don't worry about it. Just because somebody stoning him said maybe more people stay at home or what?
Or going outdoors. I don't know. There's a lot of theories about it. Let's take another break. So, Kenny, have you ever done a one of these Ancestry.com? You ever checked out?
My wife is huge on it. So
okay.
I found out I got a lot of Scottish in me.
That makes a lot of sense. That may be where that language you had to work on is. Maybe that's some of your Scottish.
A little Irish and Scottish. So that's a double whammy, isn't it?
All of the Robertsons, Scotland.
Yeah.
I asked him, I said, well, what kind of name did we leave once we started coming to America? He said, both good and bad. he had the kilt.
Oh, yeah. Dad on the show, they went to the to the museum, where it was actually, it was like our clan.
Yeah.
We were the McDonoughs, and we were a substructure of the Robertsons.
I said, dude, you stay in America for a couple of 100 years. I said, this is what you end up looking like. He was like,
he wasn't sure to think about that.
But we wear pants.
Hey.
So it's really interesting. I love the idea of finding out where you come from. It's just something about that. So Ancestry.com is a great place to be able to do that. Check these guys out. We found out, through Ancestry.com that we had a sister, or she found out she had some brothers and a dad she didn't know about. So obviously it means a lot to us. So if you want to learn more about your ancestry, go to Ancestry.com/Phil. And you get to start your free trial. So it's Ancestry.com/Phil, and check it out. There's a lot.
Duck call sales along with burger sale. Well, you take hamburgers and duck calls. What else you want?
Could it maybe? Could it maybe?
I'm in all that.
It might be that if the verse that says, "If I can trust you with a little, I can trust you with a lot." The idea that the surrender is you spoke up for me, whether it was going to hurt your business or help your business. Right. You didn't know, and yet you did it. Of course, I love what you're doing with the stores, and that's what the shirt is, right?
Yeah.
The shirt.
By the way, the atheist would say, "Well, you were just lucky," and I raised my hand. I said, "What about me?" He said, "You were lucky too." But I mean, how much luck do you think? You look up and you're like, "Life is good."
Well,
I mean,
every day I go on my computer. Which, by the way, Phil, Al is convinced that I am the younger version of you when it comes to technology. But anyway, I do know how to go on a computer. And I'm reading about restaurants that are Chapter 11, bankrupt, or gone under. And these are players that are a lot bigger than us. And so, I'm sorry. I can't just put it all off. And it's not my fabulous leadership. This is God's business. And he's helping us right now. But the spirit that resonates within the company right now is amazing. It really is. It's amazing. And
it's ironic that we had on the podcast yesterday the whole thing that Noah does. Now he's an artist.
Yep.
And he's a very successful artist. I mean, he's in California. He's done all these big contracts for all these big Disney and all these people. But his passion, as he described on the podcast yesterday, is working with people having their business. He said he take your company and turn it into a cause, was the way he phrased it. I thought it was brilliant. And then we had we had you on the podcast today because you happened to be coming through. But you're an example of just what Noah was talking about on the podcast
100%.
Yesterday, of someone that says,
and it fits all three of us, whether it be those artists yesterday. My daughter's husband is an artist. Whether it's these prints, everybody has their own thing. Everybody's worth something.
That's right.
Some people can draw ducks on a page, can look at things differently like an artist. Some people are good at burgers making. Some people are duck call makers. You're like, well, that's a strange bunch to all come together under one head, Jesus Christ. I'm like, I don't know the workings of it, but I'm just watching it.
Yep.
It's pretty awesome to watch.
I'm not sure that I've told the story on the podcast before. Kenney probably know before I would, because we do so many, I forget the stories we tell. But I still remember vividly the time when Dad sort of went public, because, he was doing a lot of DU banquets early. I mean, he's a Christian, and, he's sharing with people, but it's mostly individually or at church. And so he hadn't really, you get in these DU things, and it's just a drunk fest, most of them. We quit doing them after a while. Just, they're doing it to raise money. I get it. But, it's just not, it's hard to put a godly conversation in it. So we were in New Orleans, and Dad was speaking. They had like a main stage. And so they would have these seminars, so all these hunting guys would get up and tell about how to cast, or, tell about this or this product or that. So Dad was the duck call demonstrator that day. And so he gets up, and there's about 400 or 500 people that have gathered there to hear him. And so he goes through his calls, and man, it's good. And it's mostly Cajuns and people from that area down there in New Orleans. And, oh, yeah, duck come out, eat good, And they're like, but everybody's drinking their Budweiser. And so Dad's standing underneath this big sign. I was a teenager, so it wasn't long after you were converted. And it said, Anheuser-Busch, King of Beers. And so Dad, he gets to his duck calls, and I'm seeing he's kind of gathering up his stuff, and that way he's wrapping up, because, I'd seen him do his duck call speech. But then I saw something clicked in you, and you pulled your Bible out. And it got just deathly quiet, because everybody's looking like,
not really expected it.
Exactly. They got their beer, and he brings out the Bible. And I'll never forget what you said. You pointed up and you said, Anheuser-Busch, he is the king of beers. He said, I used to drink a many of one back in the day. I was romping around, stomping. He said, but I discovered something from this about the King of Kings, and it changed me. And then he just shared the gospel with him. And it was kind of a short version, because it was kind of the wrap up. And so, I was shocked he did it, right. And they were too, because the beers were behind the leg, and everybody's like kind of awkward.
It got quiet.
It got real quiet. Dad's been known to shut down parties,
Buzzkill Phil.
Yes. So he walks off, and they're not quite sure, well, do we clap? How do we respond to this? And there was a guy there named Paul Dubisson that was our rep in New Orleans. And Dubisson, he come running up there, and he said, Phil, you can't do that. You can't do that. And Dad's like, do what, Dubisson? He said, you can't mix your business and your religion. You lose both. And that Dad looked at him, and I remember Dad saying, he said, Dubisson, were you not listening to what I was talking about? You not hear me talk about dead men coming out of the ground? Mm-hmm. If it wasn't for Christ, I'd have no business. And then what I realized in that moment, looking back all those years ago, it was 40 years ago, is that Dad took a public stand.
Right.
That this is who we're going to be. And so the culture at Duck Commander was always Christ first. And duck call sales, they ebb, they flow, they do good. We eat, we try to make a living. It got so bad not long after that's what sent me to seminary, to be a preacher, which was all part of my plan. Sure. Because we couldn't afford to feed three families. So God blessed us in that whole thing. But I really think in our podcast audience, it's a great discussion to have, because so many people wonder, how public do I go? All the way. Yeah. I mean, it's who we are. And so there's no holding back.
From that one session, 5 different preachers in the denominational world said, would you come to give that speech where I am down here?
They come up with the whisper, right?
Yeah, they would say, would you come to piece it out? And I said, yeah, I'll do it. So I would go to the next one, and then I would get 2 more, ask me to go to the next 2, and then I would go to that one, and then more. And that went nationwide at the speed of light.
Yep. Yeah.
Then I just started traveling around for about 15 or 20 years.
Speaking of wild game banquets.
And we just looked up one day, and duck call sales went out the roof.
Climbing.
I'm like, then here comes TV people showing up. Now we have you say, none of it was playing. All we did was speak out. Go forth and speak out and point people to Jesus.
Well, the internet rumor was, Dad, that you had
I didn't expect the rewards to be as substantial as they were.
They said you had a PhD in marketing. That was the internet rumor. That old dude that down there with the beard, he's got that's all just an act.
I am a C-plus man through and through. Trust me, in junior high and high school and college, you say, what stood out about you? C-plus.
Well, you're a plus ahead of me, okay?
Well, I told them when they said, man, C-plus, is that it? I'm like, I'm smarter than half of them.
So that was, Dad always used to tell us, he said, boys, you can be smart and act dumb, but you can't go the other way.
Yeah, that's right.
You can't be dumb and act smart.
I just tell them up front, I'm a C-plus man now. Don't get thinking I'm going to be, I'm not, it won't get that high.
Well, look, I promise y'all that last year when you did that, I promise you I'm bold. Okay. Like I said, I put it on our restaurants, the Love Your Neighbor that I have on my arm. And
I love what you're doing.
I'll put it on, I'm putting on some words on the restaurants.
Yeah, tell about hang on, let's take another break. Yeah, tell them about that too, Kenny.
Yeah, well, the Love Your Neighbor, let me get that over there on the camera. You can see it lit up.
Yep.
Yep.
And also, that's going to be on the
Turn
side.
a little more, yeah.
There we go, on the side of the building as well. And
you read those words, because I think that's...
Yeah, the words are pretty interesting, Phil. I think you might know where they come from.
Especially in today's culture.
Yeah, it's grace is on here for one. Look, I had an epiphany on that, and you guys can take this one and make this one your own, because what was that again about
an original thought is a forgotten source.
Okay, so you can forget that I told you this and make it your own, okay? I guess is my point, but when I tell our young people, see, that's what I feel like I'm trying to impact, because they still look at me and they I guess they like the way I lead, and I have an impact on them that even their mom, their dad, or maybe their preacher wouldn't even have sometimes. And I tell them about love your neighbor and what that means. But I finally have the verb. Okay, you think about it, all the IST words that we deal with now. You know, if you're a racist, you're a white supremacist, you're a sexist, I got a new IST word. I'm a gracist. With heavy on the G.
I like it.
I'm a gracist. And when you think about it, and this is what I tell our people, I said, you know what? I was in one of our managers' meeting. I said, you know what? Half of you in here didn't vote the way I did. Half of you in here probably don't think like I do. Some of you in here are a different color skin than I am, but I can show you grace. That's loving your neighbor. And you can give it back to me. We can show, instead of getting on Facebook and beating each other up or somewhere else, let's just show each other some grace. I believe that's our step into loving your neighbor. And, but anyway, grace is on here, charity, respect, compassion, smile, generosity, empathy, enduring, selfless, forgiving, gratitude, caring. All these words sound familiar. The only ones that are missing are self-control. And by the way, that one took me a while to learn. And it's still coming. It still rears its head from time to time. But
what I love about the idea is that, I mean, in today's world and culture, so many people understand, and the pandemic has been through the roof, which is another reason why I'm sure sales are up everywhere, because people are in a drive-through line. In fact, I've noticed it because Lisa and I are back and forth to Alabama all the time, so sometimes we got to stop and eat somewhere. Mm-hmm. And it was like, this is insanity. At 3 o'clock in the afternoon, there's a long line at the drive-through. In the old days, at lunchtime, it was like that. But, but so what's happening is they've gotten used to now going, getting their food, and then taking it somewhere. And so what I love about your idea, Kenny, is that someone's waiting there. So I've spent time as well, 10, 15 minutes waiting to get your food. And you're just sitting there, usually looking at your phone, whatever, because you're in a line, you're bored. But you've got something now for people to look at and contemplate.
Wonderful.
Which and is also, if you'll notice, there is a little bit of business in this too. The biggest, boldest one is patience. Okay, so if you are in line and we're messing up inside, patience and grace. Okay,
that helps the person to work at the window, right?
Exactly. Buy us a little time here. Okay.
Well, another thing I think is brilliant by what you're doing. So, Dad has showed on the podcast several times when we share the gospel with people, we have these little symbols we use. Because the guy that shared with Dad first came up with that, and it was just a visual. Because we were talking about different people looking at things differently. A lot of people learn visually. Some people are audio. There's different ways. So this is just another way to show what Jesus did, rather than just maybe necessarily reading the verses. Mm-hmm. And so it's the arrow and the cross, and then a little tomb, and then across him going back to heaven and coming back. It's just 5 little simple symbols that tell the story. And so Bill Smith, the guy that converted Dad and led him to Christ, he came up with that, and he used to use it, and so we thought it was pretty cool. We started, and then people started putting it on stuff. I see it all over the country now.
Well, it's all over the country.
It's out there, and it was interesting that the guy who came up with it was the one that led us to the Lord.
Yep.
But what you're doing is the same thing with your symbol.
Yeah.
Is that people ask, right?
They do.
And
I had the.
It'll go like that. It'll like the.
I hope so.
right.
Well, the lily, look, it's already doing that within the company.
Yep.
Okay, and I had our first new from the ground up, brand new prototype store. I was talking with the staff, and I said, "Has anybody out there asked you what is that?" And they all went, "Oh yeah," and I went, "Awesome," because that's exactly. And what we're probably going to do is come up with a little card that has that symbol on it and talks about grace and on the back, so that if I don't get the most vocal person get asked that question, or we have failed in training somewhere, they can hand them a card anyway.
Yeah.
So we're going to spread that love your neighbor. I mean, we're going to spread it, and we get to share a meal too, Phil. We get to cook them a great meal too, and spread love your neighbor. And I get to teach a younger generation what it means to love your neighbor.
One of the things that Dad did, from watching the show from Duck Dynasty, is that if Dad ever tried to be overt with the Bible, it got cut. I mean, that's not going to make it on air. So he figured out wisely, not too long into the process, that if he's just doing his Philisms, and he's sounds like he's 900 years old, which we talked about, but a lot of times those were Bible verses. Dad would just do the verse in a conversation. Well, these people don't know the Bible. So you were sneaking in the word of God onto the show that they weren't going to really put it on there.
That's right.
By knowing it, which we talked about. What's the verse in Hebrews that says, you train your mind by the constant use of the...
Yeah. Acquainted with righteousness, you know how to distinguish good from evil.
Right. By constantly having the word of God in there. And so I think that was Dad's philosophy. And so it really started to, and that's kind of like with this. These are biblical themes. You're not taking the Bible and beating everybody's head, but you're speaking the words that Jesus spoke.
That's right.
Which is the power. Because that's how you do it in our culture, because they're going to shut you down if you just try to go. I mean, you know what I'm saying? If you just try to go in there and say, well, here's the book, chapter, verse. I mean, they're just going to write you off. But long-haired,
tattooed, holy roller. Okay,
that's what they do with
You're
Dad.
going to get a little blowback, but just remember, solid food, these scriptures, and you ingest these through your ears, and they go into your heart. Out of the overflow of the heart, your brain, the mouth speaks. So solid foods for the mature who by constant use have trained themselves to do something incredible, to distinguish good from evil. Pretty simple when you get right down to it.
It really is.
We all know what evil is. We know what good is.
That's right.
Train yourself to know the difference.
Yeah.
So let's take one last break. So our last segment, Kenney, I want to ask you two questions.
Okay.
One is, so you had this year now under your belt. God was already working on you, but obviously this last year, all the chips went in, as you described, which was great. I love that analogy. So what do other people, so you got a lot of people work for you, you got a lot of people in your life. What have other people noticed about that? Or what have they said to you? Or, how do people remark about what they're seeing in your life?
Let me tell you, the neatest thing was on my birthday, and they wouldn't let me open it because I was traveling. I was on my way here, and they said they gave me a box with a buffalo on the front, because I call our company a buffalo culture. When storms come, we lean into the storm. Buffalo lean in; they don't run away; they lean in. And so they had a little and they all had a little card in there with their favorite scripture on it, and a note to me. Yeah. And I'll tear up talking about it right now. Yeah. And they've seen a change.
Yeah.
There's a calm about me that I haven't always possessed. I'm still intense. I haven't lost my warrior spirit. I've got to have that to try to whoop those competitors out there and all that stuff. But they've seen a calm in me and a kindness in me that I don't think I had before.
Right.
And I'll tell you overtly, one of the things, I was a world-class cusser. Okay. I mean, I was not only good, Phil, I was world-class. Okay. Yeah. I mean, if you can imagine. Well,
remember, out of the overflow of the heart.
I'm with you. I'm going to tell you a good story here. I have the first couple of weeks. I even text Al after I said, Al, I put a swear jar in my office, and if I said something, I had to put money in it, and I don't really like to part with my money, so it was as punishing as I could possibly be to myself. And the first couple of weeks, I think I told you I let a couple go, and he said, hey, that's not bad.
That was kind of his accountability.
Yeah, it's not bad. But I'll tell you, I have I think that's the first thing. And the reason that I picked that, because that's not a hard, that's an overt difference that people could see immediately. How do I respond? And with what language do I respond with?
We talk about it, by the way, a lot on the podcast, because a lot of people listening have the same issue. And Dad says all the time, that's how people are going to get their impression of you, is what comes out of your mouth.
That's
100%. And I'm going to tell you, I think you could poll them and they would all tell you that he's good. He's got it. Yeah, he's got it linked. Now, there are times I go, flim flam, flume flarm, you know.
Good trees cannot bear bad fruit.
Yeah.
Bad trees cannot bear good fruit. According to Jesus, and you look at that, you say, have to be careful on what they hear coming out of me, what the fruit.
That's right.
Which is a great thing for anybody.
Even on the golf course, too.
That's
Even
right.
on the golf course. I actually taught Andy when he was little that one time I let one go, and he was my caddy. He was driving the cart. And I said, hey, don't tell your mama I said that. That's a golf course word.
Yeah.
Okay. So I tried. Here I was manipulating my son. All right. So he would go home and tell on me. But I tell you, I've been good on that. And you'd have to talk to my wife. You'd have to see if she sees a change in my daughters and my kids and the people around me, because
any way you cut it,
I think they have. So
if you don't use filthy language ever, cursing, you just are easier to be around.
100%.
It just is. It is what
Well,
it
because
is.
usually it's, and I read your book, which, by the way, your book is called Beyond the Drive?
Behind the Drive.
Behind the Drive. It's excellent, by the way. So I feel like I know you pretty well after reading your book, because you read somebody's life and their story. But it was not just the cursing, but it was the anger
100%.
and everything that went with it. And so that calm you mentioned now, and I love the buffalo thing. I had never heard that before, but I love that idea, is that, I mean, things are going to be challenging. And if you have done what you've done and have this many people that are, in your life every single day, and some people not doing their job, and some people have to be fired, unfortunately, and all the things that can happen.
Right.
And reading your story along the way, it really helped me understand how then that puts you, how the evil one can come in and press the right buttons. And so that's what you have to give up. And that's what you gave him last year. You said that the last of what I've held back is yours now.
I said, I'm out. I'm out on all that other stuff right now. And please hold me accountable.
Yeah.
Yep.
I asked my people. The only time recently that I've gotten a little upset was we had an operator of one of our stores who was 35, ask a 17-year-old girl to send him some nude pics. So we terminated his employment immediately.
Yep.
Well, the community kind of came after one of my guys because he had fired that guy because they liked him, and threw a chair across the store. Imagine that. And we didn't want to bury that guy by telling him the reason why. So my poor guy took him. And I got a little intense that day. Okay. As a matter of fact, I had to catch myself a couple of times, but regretted immediately but it was because of the way they treated my guy. It wasn't. But for the most part, though, I'm once again, big time human becoming, not a being yet. I'm still working, and I'm definitely all in, and
so last
hopefully sending the right
Kenney,
message.
may your burgers never burn.
So last question, we got just a couple of minutes left, is what would you say? A lot of folks listen to the podcast. A lot of people had similar experiences to you. Some have even come here. There'll be some more come. Although we said all along, like you can come here. We're every Sunday. This is what we do. But at the same time, you don't have to come. You still turn your life over to Christ wherever you are,
right,
any day of the week. But what would you tell folks that maybe are where you were that just haven't put the chips in, yet? What would be your encouragement to them as they're listening today? Because I guarantee you people are listening today and they hear your story and they're like, man, that's me.
I'll tell you what, if you just literally think about a restaurant chain without a drive-through, sales growing, and because I'm running God's business. I mean, he owns it. I'm just the steward. And if it's economics that moves you, if it's the spirit that moves you, if it's whatever, let me tell you, I am a happier, I am a more joyful, I am a more loving man than I used to be. And if you want those things, then don't hesitate.
Yeah.
Do not find
life and immortality has been given to you and
Amen.
us as well. That's all we're so important with you. Life and immortality. Man, that's a cool position to be.
And,
That's
you know,
right.
from our perspective, it's really interesting because, you know, we didn't plan to do this podcast. I mean, we started out doing Dad's show called In the Woods with Phil, and it's just kind of Dad's musings about what he does every day in his life. Of course, that includes a lot of Bible and a lot of helping people, but it's also about running crawfish traps and, you know, doing stuff on the land. And so that's where we started this. And then because of Blaze TV, which is our network, they had the vision to say, hey, we think you guys need to do a podcast, and, you know, we'll provide the ability for you guys to produce it, which they have, and put the platform out there for you to do it. And said, you know, most of their shows are about politics.
Mm-hmm.
You know, their political commentary. A few of us, like Allie, Bess Stuckey over in Dallas, or more biblical, and they've embraced that. Which, think about it, now in our culture, almost every network doesn't want anything biblical or anything like that anywhere near it.
Yep.
You know, they don't want that. In fact, we were trying to pitch a show to A&E after our show, which I thought was a really cool concept about forgiving people. And they were like, oh, we want edgy, not earnest.
Yes.
That was the word that came back to me. And I was thinking, like, that's why all the crap is on TV. So, you know, we have this opportunity, and then to have a back-to-back podcast where we're talking to Noah yesterday, who's on the other coast doing what he's doing, the same kind of thing you're doing, and then having you on the far East Coast,
The other coast,
in
right?
North Carolina.
I hope
Here we are in the middle.
Right.
You know?
People will
That's pretty
follow.
great. You're right.
I hope people will follow you. Your thinking on
I
it,
hope
because
so.
your thinking is correct.
So if you're ever, especially most of your stores are in the Carolinas, but they're spreading around.
Yeah, they're Carolinas.
So
all the
Highway
way to
55.
Texas.
So Highway 55, we're wearing our hats today.
Thank you for wearing the hat.
Yeah. You send me some swag, and so I'll wear it on here for you. If you want a good bar, I still haven't tried one because I haven't
We'll
been.
get you fixed up.
Yeah, we're gonna have to try one. And started out kind of a 50s theme. Now you're moving to 80s, which
That's
is
right.
probably a good idea. But,
80s and Americana, and like I say, they're going to get a little bit of Jesus, even if they don't know what hit them. So that's going to be all right.
So when
too.
you were here a year ago, you came over to our house and had supper, and Jay Stone, my son-in-law, grilled up a beef tenderloin that you really enjoy because you're a meat guy.
I was very impressed.
Yeah, and so
perfect medium rare.
we didn't plan this. Well, I have the last 2 days, but we didn't plan this when you were coming. That guess what we're having for lunch? Beef tenderloin.
Back on them tenderloin.
So let's go hit it. Thanks for listening to the Unashamed podcast. Help us out by rating us on iTunes. And don't miss an episode by subscribing on YouTube, and be sure to click that little bell to get notified about new episodes. And for even more content that you won't get anywhere else, subscribe to Blaze TV at blazetv.com/unashamed.